I think the single most common question for an artist, especially on social media, is how old were you when you first started drawing? And I have a really hard time answering that question because for as long as I can remember, I've always seen myself as an artist. Ever since I could hold a pencil, I've been drawing. One of my earliest memories as a 5-year-old was going to my mother's restaurant and just drawing on little napkins, drawing little doodles like the castles and then the sun in the little corners. Now, I've been fortunate enough in my life to go through many art courses, whether it's in school or going to private classes or even studying under a Chinese master, whether it's drawing, painting, Chinese painting, or something else. Honestly, now looking back along the journey and reflecting back on it, I think there's a lot of things that I could have changed, and there's just no way to change it now. So I kind of want to share that information with the lesser experienced artists or people that are earlier on in their art careers to kind of tell them what I would do if I were to start over. Whether you're just learning how to draw or you're trying to build an art career for yourself to become a professional artist, here are some things that I would do if I were to start over today. Number 1, document everything. One of my biggest regrets nowadays is I've lost about 95% of my artworks. As I said before, I started drawing from a really young age and I've moved around a lot from the US to China, so there are a lot of works that just got lost. So I've only really started keeping track of my artworks and keeping them safe since high school. I think I got into this habit of throwing my artworks that weren't up to my standards just because of the way I was practicing, because I would practice and draw 2 or 3 sketches every single day, and if I were to keep them all, they probably would have taken up an entire room by itself. And to be fair to myself, I didn't have a cell phone or a camera back then, so it was really difficult to document everything, and I didn't have that mindset. But now we're in the digital age and social media is so popular. You should definitely be taking pictures of your works and either putting them on social media, and if you don't like them, just archive them, no big deal. You know, luckily for me, social media wasn't back then, or else I would have posted probably some pretty embarrassing stuff myself. I think as an artist trying to improve, it's really important to dig through those files and see how far you've become either a year ago, 2 years ago, or maybe even a week ago to compare yourself and see how far you've come. Number 2, play around with as many materials as you could. A mistake that I made really early on was getting too comfortable with one material, which was graphite. I basically refused to use any other tools just because I got too used to that feeling of being the best at one material. I think it's because I've always been the best at graphite and sketching compared to the people around me that I got too comfortable to that feeling and I didn't want to let it go, which was very bad for me. You know, as a kid, since I put in so much practice on graphite, that made me really stand out and I really liked that feeling and I wanted to keep it for as long as possible. So in art classes, when we moved on from black and white drawings to painting, I kind of was put into the same level as everyone, which was complete beginner. So I really hated that and I just wanted to stand out. So I kind of rejected oil painting in general. I kind of just told myself, you know, I don't like this material and I prefer graphite just because it's so much faster and it's easier to control and it's cheaper. But now looking back, it's probably more of an excuse than an actual reason of making art. So what I should have done was just kept humble and just started learning a new material like everyone else and try to improve on it. Now, as a professional artist, I see all these painters around me making these beautiful works and it kind of makes me wish that I could at least know how to do those, which is why I've decided to ground myself and start painting after I finish this massive graphite drawing that I've been working on, just because there are images in my head and concepts that cannot really be completed in just black and white and they need the deeper depth of color. In my freshman year at college at the Maryland Institute, we had this program where every student had to go through before they go into the second year, which was basically just a required class of drawing, painting, sculpture, digital, and all these sorts of forms of different media to expose the students. And even though early on I knew I wanted to focus on my drawing, there were so many concepts I learned from the other fields of art like sculpture and digital where it expanded my views of what art is and what art could become, and it ultimately really helped my drawings. Number 3, stay connected. Now, I think one of the traits a good artist always has is ego. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing, and many beginner artists have that too, and that's totally fine. But speaking from experience, my ego probably got in the way of my art career and potentially denied me some opportunities that I could have had. It's a mistake that I've made in my past and one that I've realized a little bit too late, and I see it in a lot of other artists on social media as well. They often think it's really cool to have thousands of followers but follow 0 people at the same time, other than, you know, maybe a few celebrities. And trust me, I've done that before, but ever since graduation, I've humbled myself and realized I cannot do this alone, and I need the help of others, and in general, I'm just not as good as I thought I was. There have been moments in the past where I genuinely thought that I was one of the best graphic artists in the world, and ever since discovering these bigger artists and people around me, I realized that I will never be the best. Now, let's say hypothetically, I was the best at shading, but there's so many more stuff that I can learn, like different materials that I could utilize to make my tones different or stand out, or different concepts that I can utilize, or just marketing myself. There are just so much information that I can obtain from other people in the field or on the internet that I'm just hurting myself if I don't just drop my ego and reach out to them for help. I try to build a relationship with a lot of the different artists in my field, and I reach out to them so often that it probably is getting annoying to them. Being connected with other people is just so important, and it will lead you to opportunities that you never thought you could have had. And lastly, develop your own style, even if you're not creative. This is probably the best way that I can put it, but it sounds confusing, and let me explain. I've always seen myself as someone who lacks creativity, and I know a lot of you might be able to relate to this, especially as hyperrealism artists. We often work off of a photograph. Going through art college, I've met so many people that can just create an entire image in their head. They can create a human being with perfect pose and a great lighting and a matching background, and it's something that I can just never imagine myself doing. I've always been an academic drawer, which basically means that I work off of still life and photographs a lot, so I've never really had to imagine something off the top of my head and put that to paper. Now, I admit this is probably a skill that can be trained and I can get better at if I just practice at it, but that's a topic for later. One thing that I firmly believe in is artists being unique and having their own personal style and being recognizable to the art world. Now, let's use realism as an example. It's a specific category and not something like painting where you have subcategories like minimalism, abstract. So how do you separate yourself from others if drawing is not a style that can be really easily manipulated and look different? That's a question for you to figure out, but some artists do it through dark backgrounds or completely white backgrounds with composition or just their concepts. It's important to separate yourself from everyone else around you, so you start picking up steam and people recognize your art instantly the second they see it. These are some of the things that I would have done if I were to start over. Now, as I mentioned before, I don't really have any regrets, and what's been done is done, and I can only move forward from now on. And that applies to you too. Even if you're not just starting out, if you're in the middle of your art career, you can still start applying these to your everyday life, and it's never too late to get started. Thank you guys for supporting the channel, and if you could take the time to leave a like, subscribe, comment. I heard it helps the algorithm. Let's try it. It's my first time asking. Thank you again for the support, and I'll see you next time. Bye.